sports. We've got Johnny Mack, of course, on our team, 97.3 ESPN.com, Eagles insider and national NFL columnist. FanRag Sports here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN app. And he joins us now on the Sports Bash, where some news today from the press conferences. The coordinators spoke, but Fletcher Cox back at practice today. Was he a full go, John, at practice? Does it look good for him on Thursday night?
Well, he was a full go, and in theory, that means it should look good for him on Thursday night, but it's not a normal practice. It's a very scaled-back practice in the short week. I still get the feeling it's kind of gamesmanship to get the Panthers thinking Fletcher might be there. The extra time after Thursday and the fact that the next game is on a Monday night, you have 11 days, it just never made sense for me to push Fletcher Cox back for this game, especially after you beat the Cardinals. I still think he's not going to play. Now, the other side of that argument is why have him out there at all? It's, he could tweak the calf again or anything of that nature. So the other side of the coin is he's completely healthy and he's going to play because that's what NFL players do.
Right.
So basically, it's up in the air.
Yeah, it seems like it would be up in the air under those premises. Pretense, of course, you look at Wendell Smallwood now. He's a mystery because, one, no one knows what the heck is wrong with this guy, right? And number two, he couldn't practice yesterday or today. So it went from how did he get hurt? Well, it happened in the game. He's questionable. Very brief from Doug Pederson last Friday to him being out on Sunday to no practice Monday and now no practice Tuesday.
Yeah, and he's got swelling on his knees. That's the issue. But yeah, we don't know when it happened. It happened in the four quarters of the game.
When did it happen? During the four quarters. That was pretty good.
Yeah. And it's just obviously he's not going to be able to play this week. This was the key day. The fact that he's not even able to be out there in a limited fashion. It's going to be LeGarrette Blount, Corey Clement, Kenyon Barner again. And as we've said many, many times with Wendell Smallwood, that's been the biggest issue with him is staying healthy and staying on the field. He had one game as a big part of that rotation, and he's hurt again, and he's not going to play.
We obviously saw last week that they, entrusted Kenyon Barner a little bit more than you thought maybe?
Yeah, they did. He was a big part. He just kind of fit in as the third guy, so he didn't get as much work as Wendell would have gotten. But he was very impactful, obviously, as a returner, and he's been great in that role. That'll continue because without Wendell out there, he's also the main kick returner as well as the punt returner. And he's the only guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield, so he kind of has to be out there to be the third down back. And real quick on Fletcher, let me circle back to him. He did speak after practice today, and he was very, very non-committal. That's why it kind of leans me to think the Eagles might be playing some games with the Panthers.
Interesting. John McMullen at practice today, 97.3 ESPN.com, of course, covers the Eagles. Lane Johnson, any new news there? I thought I saw a tweet last night that somebody, I guess it was Jeff McClain, said he talked to Lane, said, I'll be fine, but that seems like, number one, it could be breaking some rules there. Number two, how is that possible if he can't get through the protocol?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think he's going to be fine. That part of it is unquestionable. I don't think it's very serious at all. The problem is the timing. I mean, if this were a Sunday game, I don't think there's any question Lane would be able to play. The fact, the timing and the ability to go through the steps you have to go through is the bigger issue here than recovering from the concussion. So the timing's difficult. It's always difficult on Thursday night games. Again, he was not in practice today, so that tells you he's not been cleared yet. We got one more day, then the game day. The Eagles are certainly preparing like Big V, Vitae is going to be the right tackle, and the Carolina Panthers are likely game planning, understanding that Vitae is going to be the right tackle.
John McMullen with us. John, if you look at a lot of the success of this Eagles team, we talked to Barrett yesterday, and he had played for Bill Cowher, and he said, look, Bill Cowher might not be the greatest X and O guy that he ever played for, but there was something about Bill that the players just wanted to play for him. And it seems that Doug is adapting to his players, listening to them more, listening to his assistants more. Is he growing as a head coach, and does that kind of go down the road of, you don't have to be the best X and O guy or the guy who comes up with the best game plan, that if you like playing for him and that if he is not stubborn and willing to take input, you can have success?
Yeah, I talk about it all the time. People ignore, I think, a bigger aspect of the job, and that's dealing with the locker room, dealing with the personalities, and the other ancillary things a head coach has to do. There is a long list of really, really good X's and O guys in this league that failed as coaches because they couldn't handle the other stuff, whether it's dealing with the media 3 times a week, whether it's all these off-the-field controversies. And Ron Rivera's had to just go through one with Cam Newton and the sexist controversy. It happens all the time. Doug had to deal with a number of issues last year, whether it was Lane Johnson's PED suspension or remember Josh Huff and the incident, Nelson Agholor at the strip club, a number of off-the-field things that a head coach doesn't want to deal with, but he has to. And I think he's handled that kind of stuff very well, that part of the job very well. As far as what Barrett was speaking of, the players certainly enjoyed playing for him, especially when you compare it to what they were with before. And the fact that Doug has played in this league, he understands the player's mentality. He knows when to push them. He knows when to pull it back. And to date, it's working out very well.
John, that's off the field discussion. Let's get on the field now and take a look at a number that jumps off the page. What do you attribute the Eagles' third down success to? Because that's an area where they were dreadful last season, and we all know this season they're having great success.
Yeah, lead the NFL 53%, and it's interesting. Carolina's number 2, so that's going to be a great thing to look at. The success on third down on both sides of football on Thursday night. I think the one thing both teams have in common is they have the dual threat quarterback. People think of Newton that way. They don't necessarily think of Wentz that way, but you've seen his ability to extend plays time and time again. And I think the difference this year for the Eagles is now on the back end of those plays they have receivers, whether it's adding guys from outside the organization or improvement within. When you talk about Nelson Agholor and even Zach Ertz, who's gotten even better, there's more guys who can make plays. So that has contributed to the success on third down, which is the best in football right now.
One of those guys that can make plays is Alshon Jeffery. Do you see a difference, John, in how the Eagles are using Alshon Jeffery in this offense, where they line him up, the routes and the route trees they put him on, or what he was doing rather than what he was doing in Chicago? Do you see a change between what he was doing with the Bears and what he's doing with the Eagles?
No, if anything, I think it's been the Eagles have relied less on him than the Bears would do when he was healthy. But I think that'll continue to grow, especially the one thing when Jay Cutler was in Chicago, they had a ton of success on the back shoulder throws to Alshon Jeffery. And I think ultimately that'll be a big weapon here as he and Carson get to know each other and get better chemistry. But I think the Eagles have been more well-rounded, and they've really distributed the football around, and that makes them more difficult to defend. So I know people want to see bigger numbers from Alshon, but hey, the only number that counts is 4-1, and I think everybody's pretty happy with that number.
How about the other free agent wide receiver addition? Because Frank Reich last week, he said that he wasn't worried about Torrey Smith at all. But then to see him have that touchdown, that 59-yard touchdown catch, how big was that for him? And also as far as maybe the coach's confidence in him to dial up his numbers some more.
Yeah, well, I joked last week that Frank Reich was the only one not worried about Torrey Smith, including Torrey Smith, because Torrey admitted how much he was struggling. And, yeah, he needed that play. And it's obviously a big play. I don't think much has changed with Torrey Smith other than the fact, obviously, it's a feel-good moment. It's a great celebration. But that's what he can do. That's the one trick of the one-trick pony. He is what he is. He's a deep threat, and he's not going to do much else. So from that standpoint, at least the Eagles got a home run from him.
A home run from him and a home run celebration. We're talking with John McMullen, our 97.3 ESPN Eagles insider and also national NFL columnist for FanRagSports.com. And, of course, John, there's Nelson Agholor, too. He's on pace for 56 catches and over 850 yards, 7 touchdowns this season. This is Nelson Agholor I'm talking about, just to clarify. Is it safe to say that
first round pick
role in the offense now? Can the Eagles count on him more? Nelson Agholor.
Yeah, they can. I mean, we've been talking about this since dating back to the off season. I mean, Nelson has been.
There's a lot of people, though, John, that were ripping you guys, saying, "Oh, there's too much hoopla around him." There was a lot of people that didn't trust your, the beat writers reporting.
Well, now they should be lauding us because you've seen it.
Never. You guys are never right.
But, I think, hey, if you would have told me the Eagles were going to pick up Nelson Agholor's 5th year on his rookie contract, I would have called you crazy. And now they're going to pick up his 5th year. That's how much the improvement has been. He's their second best wide receiver. It's not Torrey Smith. Look, I always say he doesn't have the most natural hands in the world. That part of the equation's never going to change. But he's improved dramatically. And besides having the great hands, he does everything a good receiver needs to do. He runs great routes. He's probably the best route runner on this team. He's a good blocker downfield in the running game. So the talent's always been there, and now you see just how important confidence can be for a player, really, in any sport.
John, let's flip over to defense here. No Fletcher Cox, but they really haven't felt the loss. They haven't missed him all that much. What do we attribute that to? Bad offenses they've played, or good depth, or what?
I think it's a combination of both. I'm kind of amazed, and not just Fletcher, also Ronald Darby and Darren Sproles, the way people have stepped up for this team. And it kind of makes you think, hey, maybe this is going to be a special year because, hey, Bo Allen's a good football player, but obviously he's limited. You can say the same about Kenyon Barner as a running back. You can say the same about Jalen Mills from a physical standpoint. But these guys are stepping up when they've been needed. And it continues. It's been a theme of this organization this season. And we talked about all the injuries around the NFL yesterday. The Eagles have had their share of injuries. Now, a lot of them haven't been season enders, so outside of Darren. So that part of it's good because you're going to get Darby back. You're going to get Fletcher back. but they've lost impactful players, and they've handled it very, very well.
They have, and you mentioned Mills, and just saw Pro Football Focus put out a stat of the highest graded cornerbacks from last week. Patrick Robinson on that list again, and I'm wondering how his role will evolve when Darby comes back. Do they dare try changing things up with him, or do they just keep him where he is in that slot?
I think they're going to keep him where he is because it has worked so well. He's been so effective. But they changed up a little bit Sunday, and I think it has to do with the game plan in the specific matchup with the Cardinals. You had Larry Fitzgerald in the slot, who's a very big receiver, and the Eagles kind of wanted Malcolm Jenkins on him, and I apologize for an ambulance, which always seems to happen. But I think when you have a normal team with a normal setup at wide receiver, I think Patrick Robinson's been too good in the slot. You want him in there.
He's been very good in that spot. The Eagles secondary has been very good. And Jim Schwartz today talked about preparing for Cam Newton. That's who they'll face. And Cam looks like he is turning the corner. He did not play well early, but he's played well the last couple of weeks, John. How will this defense deal and prepare for Cam Newton?
Well, he's a tough guy to deal with. Obviously, 6'6", 260, might be the biggest quarterback I've ever seen. He's bigger than just about every linebacker in this league. He's more athletic. He didn't have much of an off season because of shoulder surgery, so that's kind of why he started slowly. But on a short week especially, I think it's tough for this defense to deal with a player that's so unique because you just don't see him. The Eagles had Greg Ward working as Cam on the scout team, and Greg obviously played quarterback at the University of Houston. Is now a wide receiver, but he's not 6'6", he's not 260. So when you can kind of mimic the dual threat ability, but then you got to tackle the guy. And that's one of those things where I think there's a correlation between the Eagles being first on third downs and the Panthers being second. And that's the fact that their two quarterbacks can extend plays and make those third and threes or third and fours with their legs. And it's just a tough guy to deal with, as indicated by the fact he's a former MVP in this league.
John, he's a former MVP in the league, and yes, a tough guy for the Eagles to deal with. And the Greg Ward thing, I had seen that tweet earlier about how they're trying to prepare for Cam Newton. Is there any scheme-wise that Jim Schwartz could draw up that neutralizes Cam, in your opinion? Because I know Jim was asked today if he was going to blitz a lot, and he's usually the guy that's hesitant to blitz.
Well, if you ask anything to Jim Schwartz about his game plan, he will give you the Adrian Peterson to Sean Payton death stare, because he's not gonna talk about game plans. But Jim kind of admitted on a Thursday game, it's kind of who you are. In other words, there's no time to prepare. So it's going to be the Philadelphia Eagles base defense against the Carolina Panthers base offense. And I don't think there's a lot of sort of intricate things you can do if it were a regular week where you had the entire thing to prepare in the normal amount of practice time. So from that standpoint, I just don't think you have the time to draw up some really inventive things, and I think Jim kind of let that slip out today.
How about the receivers they're going to face here? Funchess, a big kid, Benjamin, they're both, 6'5" and bigger. Some big physical guys here. I mean, Fitzgerald's a big guy, but the rest of that Cardinals receiving core kind of small. Same problem with San Diego. They've got Williams, but, Benjamin and Allen aren't the bigger guys. Even with the Giants, I mean, Marshall's a bigger guy, but Odell's kind of a smaller guy. I mean, but these are two big physical guys. So this will be an interesting matchup for the secondary.
Yeah, I mean, this would be Chip Kelly's favorite team. You know, he had the famous quote, big guys beat up little guys. I mean, this is the biggest team. As I said, you got the biggest quarterback, 6'6", 260. You got the biggest wide receivers. Funches, you know, could be a tight end. Benjamin, he's so huge. The one positive, it's Greg Olson is hurt, and he's not going to be there because that's one of the best pass-catching tight ends in football. But Dixon has stepped up and played well as his replacement. And then you look at the Eagles' corners, and obviously you have Jalen, who's undersized, and Patrick, who's not undersized, but obviously he's not dealing with 6'5" receivers. And you do have Rasul Douglas, who's as lengthy as it generally gets for a corner. He's still smaller than those guys, but it's tough. There's certainly going to be some 50-50 balls Carolina has an opportunity to get because they have basically basketball players trying to box you out.
Plenty more on the NFL at JF McMullen. A big trade today. Adrian Pederson heading to Arizona, so the Eagles didn't have to deal with A. Pete. I don't know that he's going to be able to run behind that offensive line anyway. However, we'll see if he'll probably be the lead ball carrier out there. They released Chris Johnson today. Also, we'll get into more of NFL look ahead to week number 6 coming up on tomorrow's segment with John here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN app. Thanks, pal.
Hey, thank you, guys.